Did he leave? Lennon, not Mac. Lennon. Your husband, oh no, he's behind you. Keep him behind you. Do we have anyone here from deep South Texas with us?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Where are we from? Never mind. Okay. Really appreciate all you folks who have traveled great distance, 3, 4, 5 hours. My 24-minute drive over here this morning was really painful. So I really appreciate all you nice folks making the long drive here with us. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how to effectively communicate with your elected official. I'm really excited to have some folks up here who have been practically effective at effectively communicating with elected officials. I'm going to just give you their names and let them kind of do a better introduction of themselves and their group and organization. You've already met Tony McDonald, who has been with the Young Conservatives of Texas and worked in a couple of legislative offices and now works for us. Next to him is John Seago. John Seago, who you met a few minutes ago, Texas Right to Life. Next to, I guess, to John's left, on your right, where you're looking at them, is Luke Macias. Luke Macias is a campaign consultant who exclusively works for the good guys. He was Connie Burton's consultant, Tony Tinderholt's consultant this cycle, quite a few other of the really good guys, Bob Hall's campaign and others. So Luke Macias has been one of the real strong warriors out there in the consultant world. And last but not least, at the end is Jeremy Newman from Texas Homeschool Coalition. Mr. Newman headed up the Ranger program of the Texas Homeschool Coalition last session, reading about 8,000 pieces of legislation. All four of them are going to spend time talking about how to effectively communicate with your elected officials. So I'm going to ask Tony McDonald to start off this time.
Well, if you haven't heard too much from me already. So we're going to talk about effective versus ineffective things, and I may be a little scattershot here. As Michael was talking about, before I first got involved in politics in 05, 06, that time frame when I was in college with the Young Conservatives of Texas, we started interviewing candidates and doing that. We'd also do our lobby efforts, so lobby days. And actually, I guess I'd say I wouldn't call them lobbying anymore, but we did at the time. None of us made any money, so we are spending. You don't make me stand up. It's supposed to be a panel. Michael's doing this whole like stand up thing. Okay. All right. Okay. Makes sense. So I was with the Young Conservatives in Texas, and we would go down to the Capitol. So I've had that perspective on it. I worked in Wayne Christian's office. I had that perspective as a staffer. I had a perspective with Jonathan Stickland as his chief of staff, and so I've seen there. And then being with TFR, I actually haven't been through a session with TFR, but I've seen from a couple different angles what it is that people do when they're in Austin, what I think can be effective, what I think is ineffective. Couple things that are ineffective, and I've done a lot of this. When I was with YCT, we put together a flyer or something like this that said, well, here's our here's some policy brief about some random issue. So let's talk about, we're transportation, right? Let's talk about some toll roads. I don't know, let's talk about that from YCT. YCT had a position on that. And so I put together this policy brief, and we'd go print a bunch of them, and we'd all go scurry around the Capitol and go to offices, and we drop them, and we do this, and it feels really good because we've gotten our message out there. And I've now come to realize I think that was a complete waste of my afternoon, other than I learned how to get around the Capitol, learning all the little nooks and crannies. That kind of stuff doesn't work. What I learned in a member's office is, and this is a bad thing, but I think it's an inevitable thing, one of the staff's chief jobs is to be this barrier between the member and everybody else who could possibly take up their time. And every single thing that could possibly take up their time. But that is the complete mantra of everybody sitting at the front desk in every office. And that's a bad thing. It's a fact of life. It's a 5-month session, and those people are reps are very busy. So if you come in and you drop the flyer, trust me, 10 minutes later they kind of glance at it, and unless there's something really unique or interesting about it, or they know who you are, and that's where it comes first, that's going in the trash. And you both wasted your time, you wasted your money, and you made no impact. Emails, if you send emails to members, to the, let's say you send it to the Jonathan.Stickland@House, I might have seen it. Micah Kavanaugh, who was our communications director, would have gone through them, and we were pretty good about it. We would at least respond, and we would, if we saw a trend or something, Jonathan would know about that. But the member is never going to see that, with the exception, Leo Berman, who was a state rep out of Tyler, used to actually use the house. The Leo.Berman@House was his email address, amazingly enough, and so he would see them. But that is the far exception from the rule. So I don't really see emails as effective. I don't think faxes are effective. In fact, hit your fax machine with a hammer, get rid of those things. Those are not, nobody likes doing faxes anymore. Letters can be like actual, I would say a handwritten letter, particularly to your representative. If you're a constituent and you wrote a handwritten letter, or at least a hand-signed letter, and you sent that to him, that would end up on his desk. I mean, we would make sure that got there, and it would not only, they'd see it, they'd get a response. So if you want to have a point of view about something, keep it brief, keep it on point, don't talk about everything under the sun, have unobjective. But I think an actual handwritten letter does move the ball. I think it's just one letter. Go, if you're going to do it, call up your cousin and your friend and your barber. Hey, write a letter with me. I'll write it for you. You just sign it. Send a bunch, because 7 or 8 or 10, if you get a bunch of handwritten letters about something, it's going to cause a member to take notice. So things like that can be effective. But the biggest point I want to make, though, is build a relationship first. And at best, that really starts in campaign season. If this is somebody that you work for on the campaign trail and they know who you are, then you really have built a relationship. And so I actually know of a couple of lobbyists in Austin, a couple of pretty conservative guys who have energy companies and these other things that they lobby for. And they'll go out and actually block walk for the candidates, block walk, in specific districts to support them, because they actually agree, they actually care. They're just, they have the same heart. It's actually a good guy. They're the kind of same position y'all are. It's just their profession too. But they kind of build a relationship there, and then when you're showing up, it's not, oh well, it's the guy who's being paid to talk to me about this or that, or well, that's the gal from the club who's has a talking point today about whatever issue. It's somebody that they know. And where this really came in last session for me, when I was starting up an office, starting up Jonathan's office, we were talking about it. We said, well, we want to do some pro-life stuff, and we kind of want to touch on all the various conservative issues and carry something, champion something. And we said, well, we want to do some Second Amendment stuff. I said, okay. And I'm as pro-gun as anybody. But I didn't really know specifically what could we change, what needed to be changed. You're a freshman member, you don't want to come in and say, all right, well, we're going to carry the open carry bill this session, or we're going to carry the big ticket item. You kind of want to start with something that's a little more manageable, just new to the process. And so I have worked with a couple of guys who were engaged in concealed carry on campus, and they've done some other Second Amendment things. And so I knew their names. I said, okay, they're reliable, expert resources on that particular niche issue. And I reached out to them, and they ended up coming to us with 2 or 3 good bills. And they kind of gave me ideas. Said, okay, well, these are good ideas. Helped me as I went through with the attorneys there at Legislative Council in terms of drafting the bills, and then made themselves available as a resource as I needed people to come testify for a bill. They were there. We did one bill that was trying to clean up. Right now, we have a law at the state level that says you can't have specific laws at the city level or county level or whatever, what have you, regulating guns. Basically, we have a state law on what's an acceptable firearm, what's not an acceptable firearm. We don't have the same kind of law when it comes to knives. And so if anybody in here has a lock blade pocket knife, actual pocket knife, you open up, it locks. I mean, that's the most common kind of pocket knife. That is illegal in the city of San Antonio, which is insane. I mean, and nobody would know that. You walk across the city line and you walk in and all of a sudden you're committing a crime. So we went in and we said, well, we're going to preempt all these city laws. We think that just like firearms, at the state level, you ought to have a statewide law on what's a legal knife, what's an illegal knife. So we have a big bad criminal here, at least in Bexar County. I mean, in Bexar County, that is illegal. Yes, City of San Antonio. We moved the bill on this issue. Guy Scott made himself a resource in terms of testifying in the committee, talking to other, we could make him available as his schedule permitted to talk to members of the committee as they were concerned about, what is this issue? Is this really a concern? What's really going on here? He did this great thing. It was a little chart. It was like a game. It was the Texas knife quiz. And it showed 5 different knives, and you had to guess it and answer which ones were legal in Bexar County, Harris County, Corpus Christi, and elsewhere. And of course, it was completely irrational. The 5-inch blade knife that's almost a machete was legal everywhere because it didn't have the lock on it. Or it wouldn't have been legal in Corpus. But anyway, he did this thing for us and created some materials that were very persuasive. And we ended up moving that bill and getting it. We didn't get it all the way through the process because, again, you have Democrats controlling committees because of our speaker, not to be the dead horse. But I think that was a good example of how you can be effective. Everybody in here has some issue that you're passionate about. You probably have 3 or 4 issues you're passionate about, but pick the one that you think, this is my thing. This is something I really care about, and I'd like to see a change. Become an expert. Learn it, read about it. Get to know the ins and outs of that issue. I was talking to a lady earlier about E-Verify and immigration. There are great resources out there about what could our states be doing, what could our federal government be doing to combat illegal immigration. Educate yourself about those things. Then build a relationship with a member. Build a relationship with a member and go to them and say, here's something that you can do. And if they're willing to take that issue up, then if you want to see it happen, make yourself available as a resource. That means coming down to Austin to testify at the time, when the time's right. That means making yourself available as a resource to the other members. And then the other part would then be, go out and find other people who are on the same page and get them to do the exact same thing. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. Oh, I'll mention one other real quick story that I liked. Quick story. So, as you're talking to your members, it's not always a legislative thing that needs to be solved. We had a group that was in, and I think it was on laws relating to motors. It was a group of bikers, and it was laws related to motorcycles or motorcycle sales. It's something random. I don't know what it was. And they came in and talked to us, and we were very receptive to the issue. They kind of scheduled a meeting up front, and then came in and talked in the office. And on the way out, the guy said, I work at a car dealership, and there's this really dangerous red light by the car dealership. I don't even know how the topic came up. He said, but there are 2 or 3 people a year get killed at this intersection in crashes outside of this dealership. It's really bad. And I think the problem is if you look at the light at the time, the light's really bad. And I said, well, okay. I don't know exactly what we would do about it in a state house office. But I said, well, I would assume the city's aware of this problem and that this is just a bad intersection. This is the best it can be. It's just a bad best. But I'll go find out. And so I went and called, and sure enough, nobody at the city had ever heard of this situation. They didn't know about it. They never contemplated it. They didn't really realize that there was an issue there. We kind of got in their ear about it. They go down, they go check it out, they change the light. The guy comes back to me 2 months later and says, hey, they fixed the problem. So who knows, they save lives or whatever. The point is, as you see things like that, go to your members and then have them be your agent to then interact with the element of government that can fix your problem. That's another tool beyond passing bills and all that kind of stuff. Make them your representatives, and make it so that those who need to be listening to you will listen to you.
Hello, everybody. All right, so Michael mentioned earlier, my name is Jeremy Newman. I work with the Texas Homeschool Coalition. I actually want to provide a quick point of clarification. The Rangers program that Michael mentioned is actually an election effort that we had, where we're recruiting people from around the state to work the elections. The Watchman program is the one he was referring to that we run during the session, which we will be coming back with this coming session. But I actually have a quick question I want to ask you guys. Raise your hand if you're from the Austin area. If you're from the Austin area, a couple people. All right, I had a very interesting experience coming back from Austin this morning that I thought was relevant. So, a lot of you guys probably don't know a lot about motor vehicles, but when I was driving my truck back from Austin, got about 60 miles out and discovered the alternator wasn't working. So, for those of you who know, that means that as soon as your battery dies, the truck is going to turn off. So as I progressed towards Dallas, incrementally, every few miles, something else on the truck would turn off, right, once I stopped getting power. And so I finally got about 10 miles out, and the truck finally started running on about half of the cylinders. And so I managed to limp into the parking lot, and then someone came and picked me up. And I thought at the time, I was like, wow, that's exactly how the legislative session works. The closer you get to your goal, the more forms of support people pull out of your bill, right? And so it's those situations where you end up going into the office or talking to someone and you're trying to convince them or persuade them of something they're not necessarily interested in, right? And so that's where you have to come up with, not necessarily, well, I guess the big thing you have to come up with is best practices, right? What do you do when you walk into the office, when you call them on the phone? How do you interact with them? And that's a lot of things that people just don't know, even though they're not really that complicated. A couple points that I wanted to give for you guys that I found extremely interesting or extremely beneficial is when you walk into an office, generally the first person you're going to talk to is a legislative aide, right? They're sitting behind the desk. If you have the ability to make an appointment beforehand, make an appointment. Right? And don't do it with the legislative aide, right? Make an appointment with somebody who knows the issue you're talking about. So if you're there on a pro-life issue, depending on the office, some offices are going to have specific people who are there to handle specific types of issues. So if you're coming on education, for example, say I'd like to speak with someone about education, can you direct me to who handles that issue? Right? Or if the legislator or senator is there, I mean, that's always your first step, actually, because the fewer number of hands your issue has to go through to get to the legislator, the better for you. Right? So if you can speak to the legislator, do that. But if you can't, then talk to someone who deals with that issue in that office, right? Because it has the fewest number of hands that it has to go through to get to the legislator. And take something physical with you. Right? If you go into the office, have something you can leave them that will take up space on their desk so that they don't have the liberty of just forgetting about it. Right? Get it as close to the legislator as possible, as early as possible, and then leave them something that will remind them why you were there. Something else that I found extremely beneficial is when you're discussing the issue with the legislator, make sure to make what you're speaking about relevant to who you are speaking to. Right? You can go in there, and if it's important to you, there's a big difference between being annoying and being passionate. They're not the same thing, right? If you go into the office and you just talk about something that's important to you but has no relevance to the person or the office or the legislator you're speaking to, they will sit there politely and they will take notes and they will likely forget about the issue once you leave, right? So to the degree that you can, make it relevant. If you live in that district, naturally you tell them you live in their district. If you don't, find something relevant about it to their district. If there isn't anything particularly relevant about their district, think about their policy perspective, right? If it's a Republican or if it's a Democrat, there are certain aspects of the issue or the bill that you're working on that are going to be a larger or smaller issue to them, right? So highlight those things for them. And point out what the things are in your piece of legislation that make it important, not just to Texans, although that's a big issue, but to the office and the person you're speaking with, right? Not just why you need their help, but why they should want to help you, right? That's a big difference. So a lot of people, actually, quick story. Before THSC had full-time people who we brought on to work our legislative session, we hired a lobbyist to do our lobbying for us. And the person we hired apparently didn't have a whole lot of experience. And so the first time that we had a bill come up in committee, the lobbyist that we hired showed up in the committee hearing and somehow managed to tick off every single person on the committee panel. I don't know exactly what he said since I wasn't in the room, but whatever he said didn't go over well.
I would like to just admit
That was
I
your
was
first
the
job.
lobbyist.
I had left out names to protect the mostly innocent, but he can take that fault if he wants to. So at any rate, he didn't last very long on our payroll. And our president, Tim Lambert, ended up having to go down there and make amends with all of these different offices, right? So a lot of people, there are multiple different situations in which you're going to be interacting with the legislative officials. If you walk into the office, like the things I mentioned, talk to someone who deals with the issue, make it relevant to them, bring something with you, get as close to the legislator as you can at the beginning, but you're not always going to be corresponding with them live in the office, right? One thing a lot of people don't do that is not as difficult as people think it is to testify in committee. You guys have a lot more life experience about a lot more relevant issues than you think you do. There are bills that come up all the time that deal with normal everyday issues that you most likely have life experience on. And the amount of life experience that is actually expressed in committee hearings is just a tiny portion of the actual amount of life experience relevant to the issue.
Yeah, can I comment on that? I totally agree with that. I think effective testifying, when you testify in committee, don't go to testify because you have an opinion, okay? That doesn't really move the ball that much. What does move the ball is if you have a story that is relevant to the bill. If you have a personal story that is memorable about that piece of legislation, do go and share that.
And it's not anywhere near as difficult as people think it is, right? I mean, you go in and you sign up, and then you wait in line, and when they call your name, you go and sit down, you state your name, and then if you want to, you can just read off a piece of paper, and you can bring paper, handouts that they give to all the different officials. But having testimony, most bills don't end up having any testimony at all, right, when they come up in committee. Having testimony on the bill, if it's something that's important to you, will make a difference because they will at least have something factual to base their opinions off of. Right, so take something with you that you can hand out to them if possible, and don't be afraid to testify in committee about something that's relevant to you or important to you. And like Tony was saying, make it beyond just your opinion, although your opinion is important. Make it about a life experience you or somebody you know who's close to you had about that issue. That matters. Some of the other different ways that you can correspond with them, Tony was talking about over phone, over email, things like that. We had one of the things that we do a lot during the legislative sessions, we call for phone calls on an important bill. There was a bill that came up in the Senate Jurisprudence Committee. I won't go into the details of the bill, but the long and short of it is we needed the bill to die. It was the chairman's bill. And so we sent out an email to the homeschooling community and said we need you guys to call the offices. They sent so many phone calls into the chairman's office over the space of about 3 days that if you were to walk into the chairman's office at any point during those 3 days, basically his entire staff was answering phones, right? So that leaves a little bit of a mark on that office, right? They remember the 3 days that they didn't get anything else done because of that issue. So phone calls matter, and if you're calling yourself, right, you're not going to have the same call volume, but get people who you know care about the issue to call with you. It literally usually takes about 20 or 30 seconds. They're not going to stay on the phone and debate the issue with you. You call in and you say, this is the important issue, and they'll usually ask you where you live, and you say, this is my opinion, I think you guys should support it or oppose it, and that's really all they care about. They're usually marking it down on a piece of paper, and they're keeping a tally, right? So you guys don't have to know all of the details about all the issues, because they're not going to ask you over the phone most of the time, right? So I think Luke is wanting me to finish up here because we're trying to keep on a time schedule, but I could talk about a lot more. Those are the things that I think are really important for people to keep in mind. So it's not as difficult as you think it is, right? There are some best practices that you guys can follow, and it makes it a lot more effective, and you will see some results on your issues that I don't think you'll see otherwise.
Real briefly on the phone call, let's actually go ahead and applaud. On the phone call thing, I feel like inundating calls works really well, works more effectively if you're trying to stop something than if you're trying to get them to move on something. It'll annoy them into kind of being oppositional if you're trying to get them to move something. Opposing something works better. Where it works best is if there's a bill that inadvertently is hurting you, it's a poorly drafted thing. And so, for instance, something that deals with public schools or even institutional private schools, impacts homeschools. And they didn't really want to hit homeschools, but it's going to do that. That's where a lot of pressure, and they'll go, okay, we'll absolutely carve you out if you'll stop calling. And so that just, I wanted to make that point. It's a different, depends on what you want in terms of how you go about if you're going to make a lot of phone calls.
Well, I want to do just a few things really quickly, and then we're going to have a little bit of discussion at the table level. But first is, even on an issue like pro-life, even an issue that you think we're a conservative state, even though we have some Republicans we're not comfortable with and don't think are truly committed, it's a Republican, there are Republican majorities in both chambers, so of course pro-life legislation is going to pass. And that's absolutely not true. Every pro-life bill has a story of the political environment, of kind of why it was even on the table. But more importantly, every pro-life bill represents pro-life citizens behind it that actually came and talked about it, actually called their legislators. So even with an issue that you think you can just assume is taken care of, we need pro-life, we need citizen activists. We need you guys to be involved. And Jeremy gave a good example, and we have our own examples of that where we were trying to stop a bill, walked into the room and just saw all the staffers on the phone because pro-lifers were calling in, and that's extremely effective. So I want to just get down to some brass tacks a little bit about what it looks like. The most effective thing you can do is meet with your elected official. And that's not easy. As Tony said, there are gatekeepers in front of your legislator. The scheduler, the chief of staff, even any other staff, they're going to try to keep you from meeting with your legislator. But that's the gold standard. So if you're thinking about whether you're going to stay at home and rant on Facebook or Twitter, whether you're going to send a bunch of emails and get all your friends to send emails, that's great. But put all that time together and make a trip to Austin. Get some of your friends to come to Austin. And there are days, we have specific themed days. We have a pro-life activist day. I know Jeremy has the homeschoolers have their days when they ask their homeschool families to come down to the Capitol. That is the most effective thing you can do, is meet with your legislator or meet with the legislative staff. Now, the way to do that is to schedule a meeting. So, at the beginning of the session, you're going to come, during spring break, or you're going to come with your kids, 1 week that they have off from school or something like that, or if they're homeschooled, it's a field trip. Get on your legislator schedule. Call them and actually get on the schedule. That's extremely important. You have a better chance, not 100% guaranteed, but a better chance to meet with your elected official. But even whenever you get into the office, I just want to share a few things that are delay tactics. Because the legislator, they're glad you're there. You're a constituent, you're a voter of theirs. They want to have some face time with you. They want you to feel nice and warmy and fuzzy and warmy about, whenever you walk out of their office, you're thinking, I'm going to vote for that guy again. He's doing good things. I know, that's that. But what we have, and even as a lobbyist, I have this, is there's a few delay tactics that they want you in their office, but they don't want to talk about your issue. They don't want to get down for, they have to admit what they think about that pro-life bill, or what they think about that border security bill, or that Second Amendment bill. So you get the office tour. You scheduled your meeting, you get in there, 10:15 to 10:20 is the time that they've given you. Not really. Usually they at least give you 15 minutes. You go into the office and they want to give you the office tour. Look at this great painting I got from an artist from the district. Look at this great map of Texas, and don't we love Texas? And they're just running out the clock. It's a filibuster. You might not recognize it. They're just running out the clock, right? They're just trying to show you every little piece of art that they got from the district, every award that they've won, and trying to just kill the time. So the last, I got to go to this next meeting. What was the issue you were here about? What bill did you want me to vote for? Oh, thanks for coming. That's the office tour. And this actually happens. There's a great pro-life representative who, if I don't stop him, he will give me a tour of all these pictures of airplanes he has in his office, and he'll explain the backstory. And you guys know what I'm talking about. He'll explain the backstory of every single picture, what model, what year that plane is, and that's interesting. But that's not why I'm in his office. And he's a pro-life guy who actually leads. But you got to keep him on track. You get their life story. You know, I've met 180 most pro-life legislators I'll ever meet. I hear every meeting, oh, I'm the most pro-life legislator you'll ever meet. Let me tell you how pro-life I am. One time I was driving down the road, you get their life story, and they're running out the clock. They'll tell you, well, I was on this pregnancy center board, I did this 5K when I was 17 years old for, this cause. No. We're not here for the life story. We're here to talk, and especially since they have a short amount of time, you have to get that. You're interested in your legislator, but you're not there to hear their life story. The other way is the opposite. They want to hear your life story. They'll ask you more and more questions. Oh, what high school did you go to? What number in your class were you? I mean, they're asking ridiculous questions to run out the clock. So at the end of the day, at the end of the meeting, you've only got 30 seconds to actually talk about the reason you're there, your bill. So these are delay tactics, and that's why you have to have, in general, like Tony said, you have to go into the meeting prepared, knowing what you need to get from them, what you need to articulate to them, and I'll tell you, like it was mentioned, your personal story. Don't go in there and try to act like a scientist or try to act like a lawyer, unless you are one. If you're one of those, come talk to me, and we'll work together. But go and be yourself. Explain why this issue is important to you. Why do you care about this pro-life issue? Why do you think? Why are you concerned about border security? Explain your personal angle on it. And do your research. Have your information together. Have your resources. You can leave them a flyer. But know why they should listen to you about it, and not just go read some talking points off of a website. And then and then using the right tools. And in the next one, we're going to talk about the right tools that you have to interact with your legislator. But be personal. And then the most important thing you can do before you walk out of that office is to ask them their thoughts. To ask them if the vote was today, would they support it or would they vote against it? And this is the most important thing. You make your pitch, you give your personal story, why you're interested in this pro-life cause. You explain what this bill does, why you think it's important. You give, your kind of arguments for it, but then you have to ask. And this is what they don't want. And, Tony will tell you this. This is what they don't want to answer, is their position on the bill. And so you have to ask them. And even on the lobby team, our lobby team, we have to be really prudent about getting to this point and not being rushed out the door before we can say, what do you think? What is your position on this issue? You said you're the most pro-life person I've ever met, but what about this bill? I mean, there's a senator who says she's the most pro-life senator you've ever met, but she's never seen a pro-life bill she can vote for. Okay? We need to get to that point where I can say, what do you think about this piece of legislation? So having the information, like Tony said, what bill you're talking about is really important. Because they just say, oh yeah, I support pro-life legislation. That's not enough. What do you think about House Bill 2? What do you think about this measure that this representative is carrying? So that's the most important thing, just practically what you can do when you make those. So we'll talk about other tools that you have, but in my book, that's the most effective thing you can do, because they're going to listen to you rather than me, if in their office talking about a bill, because it's my job. I'm in their office all the time. Whereas you actually vote for them, you're actually in the district, and you can explain why this is an issue that's important to you personally.
We're going to get to a little bit of discussion and I guess Q&A. I don't even know if we're doing that. So I'm going to take literally 4 minutes. We're going to see if I can stay under time. So I like talking about effectively communicating to your legislator, because the very first political thing I ever did in my entire life was I was 15 years old, and my mom and dad signed me up for this thing that the Texas Homeschool Coalition called Capitol Days. And my dad and my brother and I went, and we literally went and met with 6 legislators. I was 15 years old, and we walked around the Capitol. It was actually really funny, because at the time, we were with a friend and his parents, and we were talking about all sorts of stuff. And his dad at one point looked at my dad, and he said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if someday you were here in this these halls. And my dad said, yeah, whatever. And then 2 years later, he was a state representative. So it's a testimony to the Lord's grace on our lives. But a couple things that I'm going to go through very, very quickly. Okay. So first of all, the meeting with the legislator is absolutely the most effective thing you can do. I will say that there are 3 things. I would not meet with a legislator who's not your legislator, unless it's something like the Texas Homeschool Coalition or Right to Life. They have their days you can go up and lobby with them, or TFR. So specific organizations that have groups of people taking you around, great. But I wouldn't necessarily go and meet with 8 legislators unless you're an expert in that subject matter. I think Tony talked about that. Become an expert. If you're an expert in red light cameras, you know more about red light cameras than anybody else, you can go meet with 20 legislators about it, because they don't know anything about it. So you'll be fine there. But unless that's the case, don't meet with somebody who's not your legislator. Because at the end of the day, you walk in, hey, where are you from? Fort Worth? Well, we're from Houston, so you have fun. And then you're just going to be with the legislative aide or the intern, and you're going to get going. So focus on that. Also, I want to point out that this is about effectively communicating with your elected officials, and that doesn't only apply to state elected officials. So going back to even the red light issues and stuff like that, you know, your city councilmen, your county commissioners, your county judges, any of those people, your district clerks, your school board members. One thing I want to encourage everyone here to do is meet with, and this is actually something I tell college groups and high school groups that I talk to, is I want you to meet with 4 elected officials, of your elected officials this year. 4 that you haven't met with, you've never sat down with. I want you to contact their offices. If they're a school board member, literally just get on your school board, email them, say, hey, I'd like to meet you for coffee. I want to talk to you about the school district. I want to talk to you about the city. I want to talk to you about the county. And I want to meet you. And this goes back to what several people here said about creating a relationship with the people that represent you. Because what you'll find is then you can much more effectively move them on an issue. Know your legislator. If you're meeting with somebody, especially on the state level, look up their ratings, know who you're meeting with, their background, their views. If they're not rated well by Tony, it's probably because Tony just personally doesn't like them. So that's how he does it. But then you'll know Tony doesn't like this guy. So it's good to know. But you can know who you're going in. The other thing I was going to say, though, is don't make assumptions. And I'm not covering for any elected officials here, but I would say don't make assumptions in this. You would be surprised there are always unlikely alliances on different issues. And every legislator can, at times, be good on your issue, even if they're not good on other issues. So if you have a specific issue, you'll have candidates who really aren't good on fiscal issues, and you walk in and they're like, I hate red light cameras. I just had to pay a ticket for a red light camera. I can't stand these things. What can I do to get rid of red light cameras, right? And they might be for bloated budgets. So if you're there to meet with them on specific issues, know who you're dealing with, know their background, but also don't make assumptions. You can go in and they might actually be with you on your issue specifically. Friend or foe. If they're a friend, by the way, if there's someone who you know is with you on the issues, I would still go down and meet with them, and I would just encourage them. So if there's somebody who you know you like your state representative, he's an awesome guy, you know he's with you, you're there to say, hey, 4 minutes, okay, there's my 4-minute mark, I'm done. So meet with your friends, encourage your friends. If it's a foe, you want to clearly communicate your position and record it. You want the email, you want the meeting, you want the scheduled meeting that you had. That way, when the guy doesn't do what you asked him to do, you can go to all your friends and family in the area and tell them, I went and met with this guy, I have an email from him, I told him, clearly explained the bill, the issue that I was tackling, and he still ignored me, he still voted in the wrong way. I think that pretty much covers everything I need to talk about. I am a former lobbyist with the Texas Homeschool Coalition, y'all heard that story earlier, so now I do campaigns, it's much easier. I can yell at people a lot easier. So, Tony, I know you always have thoughts here.
Yeah, well, I have one thought on that is, if you were opposing somebody's bill, you should go meet with that member and their staff and tell them why and talk about it. Because as you go to talk to, even if you know 100% they are never going to change their position, it is still worthwhile to talk to them. If you're going to go meet with other legislators about some issue and say, I oppose this, they're going to want to know that you've talked to that member about it. Because sometimes there is compromise to be had. Sometimes they're affecting, I mentioned, bills dealing with public schools or dealing with institutional schools that then have an effect on home schools. sometimes they don't want to impact homeschool. You know, it's much easier to just carve your problem away and move forward, and then everybody's happy. So go have that meeting. It's interesting how much we would. I made this mistake, I think, a couple times where we thought, well, it's like a legislation by ambush. We're gonna move something forward, and we don't want to tell our foe what we're doing, because then they'll know. But look, they're gonna figure it out. The process is designed to be slow, and you actually lose credibility by not having those initial meetings.
Yeah, I want to say, for a lot of you, a lot of the people in this room, you have a great representative, or you have a great senator now in SD10. They still need to meet with you. They still need to hear your personal story, because whenever Senator-elect Burton goes to the floor, she needs to be able to say, I have heard the personal stories from my district. She needs to be able to argue that, no, this is not a made-up problem, that these pregnant women are being victimized in abortion clinics in our area. I mean, she needs to have, so you're helping her, even though you think, and I know I heard it earlier, somebody said, oh, well, I have this representative, I know he's on our side. You still need to go give them the support. I mean, these guys get beat up, and you know Planned Parenthood's in their office. So even though we know they're solid pro-life, we need to give them the arguments, we need to give them the handouts, the personal stories also. In that way, you're helping them, even though they're a solid, they have 100% record with Tony's group, they have 100% record with the homeschoolers. You know, they still need us, and that's one way we can help. And then the same as with the other side. If you know, and I live in Austin, unfortunately I have to for the job, it's an occupational hazard. I do live in Austin, so I have, Donna Howard is my representative. And she votes against every pro-life bill, but I'm still going to tell her, and my wife is still going to tell her, the issues that we see, and kind of my wife specifically, because I'm a little too political. Giving her specifically, why my wife helps these pregnant women in pregnancy resource centers, and how, that her heart breaks for these women who are being victimized by the abortion industry. And even though I'm never expecting a vote from her, I'm never expecting her, but that needs to be had. That needs to be done. And as our representative, she needs to know where her voters are, and why this is not just a political issue, but there's a personal tie to the issue. So.
Well, Jeremy, I was going to say, make yourself available as a volunteer to members who are like-minded. If you have, Connie Burton is carrying something that you care about, and you're in her district, and you have some expertise that you can make available, let her know. Let her staff know. Let her, they're going to be looking for witnesses for their bills. And so rather than trying to, struggle to find who those people are, if you have a volunteer, that's excellent. Just on the same point, just make them aware if you are willing to volunteer.
Quick question, please.
Yes, ma'am.
What happens when your legislature, he hears your name and he hangs up on you? I am serious.
Record it.
Well, no, I mean, somebody said record it. I mean, that's no joke. That's no joke. If somebody's treating you that way, that is a campaign issue for them. That they're doing that. If they won't speak to their constituent, that is a campaign issue. Now, there's a lot of steps between where you're at and replacing that person. You've got to recruit a candidate, have somebody who'll run, but may document that.
It's a badge of honor.
Well,
I agree.
Yes, sir.
She brings up a good question, and the answer to that question is that should never occur. It is our job to establish effective rapport. Regardless of your attitude, regardless of who you're speaking with, you must leave their office having established effective rapport. That should not occur.
Yes, sir.
If I go to votesmart.org and I see that John Cornyn has 12 phone numbers and key staffers, should I call every one of them when we're doing the calls?
For scheduling or for just contacting?
Activism. If they say to call John Cornyn, should I call 12 numbers that I find for John Cornyn?
I would say, well, no, I'll let.
Yeah, if it's
I
an
do.
office that has a lot of staff like that, then you ask.
In all their
who deals-
district.
Yeah, different
Right,
locations.
ask who deals, especially with Congress or your senator, ask who handles pro-life bills in your office. Especially if you're talking about federal representatives, say, and I always do that even now because Capitol staff in DC changes a lot. So I say, who's handling pro-life bills? And then we'd be like, oh, well, that's, Rebecca, and you'll put yours through her. So figure that out. If it's issue, focus on the issue base. In some offices,
Don't talk to all 12.
I would not call out 12. Yeah, get the right person, because what's going to happen is, they're either not going to listen to you or just forward you to the
But
right
if they're keeping score,
Well,
They won't count you 12 times.
yeah, on that keeping score thing, the comment was made of keeping score, but some issues, you actually will kind of keep a mental tally, or maybe even a physical tally of constituents who call. But I would have people call in and they're like, I want to say I'm opposed to this, and we knew what our opinion was, and so I was like, all right, I'm marking it down, it's like, I'm not really keeping a tally, I think that's
If
a
you're
little
gonna call
misconception.
12 people, then change your name every time. Sir, you had a question?
Not really a question, but a support on something you said.
Yes, sir.
On being ready when you go to the office. One of the bills we opposed in the last legislature was House Bill 300 that was going to fundamentally change our education system. And we went ready to go, and we said, okay, on page 43, paragraph 3, this would allow a single parent with 8 kids to have 8 votes in the school district, and a married couple with 1 child to only have 1 vote. So we went there saying, here's one of the spots where this is really, really bad, as opposed to just saying we oppose.
Yeah, absolutely, have specifics. There are inadvertent things people don't think about. They, oh, that's a good idea, we're voting on the number of kids. Well,
We do want to get, anybody who has questions specifically, ma'am?
My question is about petitions.
Yep.
I always see online petitions and everything, but in our group, we do a lot of handwritten. And like we gave Greg Abbott one that 4,000 signatures on it in less than 48 hours. So that stuck out in his mind, he came to Waco, that kind of thing. Is handwritten that much more valuable? If you walk in and hand
It really is that much more valuable. I was going to say, and I want to get to a couple more questions, but I took down just notes of the biggest takeaways from anything these guys said, because we said a lot of garbage. But it's meeting in person is the most effective, only with your own legislator, unless you're an expert. Handwritten letters will likely be read by the official. That's very true. So if you handwrite something and send it, that is likely to make it to your legislator's desk. Talk to 4 elected officials that are somewhere in your area in the next year. That's 1 every 3 months. And then when you get the emails about calling your legislator, do it. And if you're going to call all the numbers, change your name. Yes, ma'am.
What is your advice regarding involving the press on your issues or press releases?
So I'll take that one. Definitely a good idea. I think most people in the press today are actually pretty lazy, which is really beneficial to us because we can kind of write their stories for them. So definitely involve your local press, especially if it's an issue locally. I mean, they're looking for drama. And you can create drama and say, here's my story, and I tried to contact him, and he wouldn't meet with me, and I went down to his office, and I got the tour, and I couldn't even meet with him, and I'm trying to tell him about this issue, and it affects me. You might be surprised. So I'd involve local press as much as possible.
On that point, I'd follow up on the press, if you send a press release out or something about an issue or some issue your group's involved in, I'd follow up with, a few targeted reporters to say, hey, did you get this? Have you seen it? What do you think? That kind of thing. Because it's so easy just to miss the release. But if you make them aware of it, it can be
And what about
effective.
emails?
Yes, ma'am.
Where yours says it's not effective. What happens if you send out and they all have the same subject coming to them? So they may not read it, but if they sort by their subject and they have 500 emails with the same subject,
Very effective. Very effective.
There we go.
Keep it going. Sir, you have a question?
I have a question about testifying when other witnesses have a lot of money, a lot of experts, a lot of competitive situations. In other words, everything you said is good, I accept it. But I envision that you really have an opponent. It's not just a matter of persuading the legislator, it's also a problem of addressing the arguments on the other side.
actually like to take that real fast. One of the bills that we had was a parental rights bill that deals with the grandparents access statute. It's a little bit confusing, but long and short of it is the only opposition we had was all from attorneys. All of the support came from the families who the attorneys were prosecuting, right? So when you actually get into the committee, what you discovered was that the testimony was all from the families who had personal experience with the attorneys abusing the law. And all of the attorneys were coming up and saying, well, we're the attorneys who are not abusing the law because there's not actually a loophole here being abused, and we don't know why all these families are here. They didn't actually say it quite like that. But the long and short of it is, like we mentioned before, personal stories sell, right? Unless they're going to assume that you're standing up there lying to them about your personal experience on the issue, then your personal experience represents some problem with the status quo, right? Now, whether that problem is something that you have to address in regards to argumentation from the opposition, I mean, that's something that you do depending on your expertise, right? If you're not an attorney and they're out there making legal arguments about why you're wrong, you don't have to get up there and say, well, legally speaking, he's wrong because of X, Y, and Z. You can get up there and say, I don't know what makes him wrong, but I'm telling you this happens. Right, and if you're there especially if you're there on behalf of an organization or somebody else who's pushing the bill, they're going to be able to make the legal arguments.
We got another question over here, sir.
I just
and
have
then Mike.
a question for y'all. Y'all made the point not to talk unless you're an expert to a representative that's not your representative. But I've made the note in my mind mentally here around North Texas. The Senators Bob Gould and John Corona barely lost their races, and the House member Bennett Ratliff barely lost his race. And I consider all three of them rhinos. Bob Gould lost by 300 votes. Bennett Ratliff lost by 93 votes. Me and my family, we knock doors. We block walk, we knock doors. And if you've got a person that's a legislature, and they've got opposite views from you, but they live in a purple district that's close like this, would it not be reasonable to meet with them and let them know, hey, I knock doors, I block walk, and I give to campaigns, and I could give to your opponent's campaign? Would that not resonate with them rather than, saying, well, they're not in my district, I'm not going to meet with them?
So the only thing I would say is, I think it's Sun Tzu somewhere in his book, but I've never read the book. The last thing you want to do to your enemy is tell them exactly what you're going to do. So if you really see somebody as an enemy, I wouldn't necessarily do that. I would just go do it and get them out of office, and I wouldn't bother meeting with them as much if they're not your legislator. If they're your legislator and you disagree with them, go get heard, go get met. But if you don't like Bennett Ratliff and you don't live in his district, just go block walk against him 2 years later, but don't give him a heads up. So,
yeah, I would make a point that the other side, as it were, the big government types, seem to have a better grasp of getting experts on site. In terms of if they needed blind left-handed Scotsman, they could field them. Okay. One of the problems that conservatives seem to have is to have expertise, or the expertise doesn't even know when the hearings are being held, and there seems to be no central way of contacting the expertise. This is kind of a structural issue we seem to have on the conservative side that the big government side doesn't seem to have.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be our job, the groups, the activist groups that are focused on these topics. So that's why we do, whenever we're speaking across the state and having these meetings, we're recruiting those experts. So if you know of someone who needs to be plugged into the homeschool issue, who needs to be plugged into the pro-life issue or fiscal responsibility hearings, let us know. And that's supposed to be our side of it, and to connect those resources to get the experts there. So I think maybe that's...
But one of the problems is that you segregated all of it. You see what I'm saying? Is because there are major overlaps there.
The issues? You mean?
Yeah.
No, and that's just why...
But there's overlaps that
right.
you guys don't...
Politically, though, it's not helpful for it to be that way. Politically, to cut it up and to approach different topics is the most effective, even though there may be a doctor who helps me on the expertise. I tell Jeremy, hey, this doctor who's great for us, she's also pro-life. I mean, she's also a homeschool mom, and she's raise several kids in connecting that. That's more of our, but if you have suggestions, I mean, these groups that are represented in this coalition, they're focused on their individual topics, and if you know resources or individuals or experts that we need to be using, please, definitely let us know. We need that support.
Well, along that line, so does Stickland have a list of experts that he can use, like if in his district?
Call him. Let him.
Yeah, ask
make
him.
yourself
Are there any
available.
other questions? We've got one more question. Question, Mr. Walls?
Yeah. Something that I just would like y'all to talk about real quickly, given the situation that we're at, communicating with committees, committee chairs that have bills that probably are not your representative, but, you may, that may be the only opportunity.
That's a great point. Committee chairs still have influence statewide in their committee, the education committee chair. I think that's probably going to be a phone call issue when Jeremy brings up. I mean, if the guy who's the education committee chair is getting phone calls from everybody in this room, that's gonna definitely worry him. So, are we good to go? We're wrapped up. Morgan, what do we got?
Yeah, I think so.
Done.
We can ask questions.
Yeah, you'll come to us.
Yeah, please continue.